There exists a kind of power that earthquakes cannot shake, tsunamis cannot drown, and time cannot erode. The ancient warriors of Japan didn't just discover this power, they engineered it systematically, deliberately, through a process as precise as the forging of a blade. They called it katetsu no seishin, the spirit of steel. But here's what most people misunderstand. This isn't something you're born with. This isn't genetic. This isn't talent. It's a manufacturing process. Just like the legendary swordsmiths of feudal Japan would take raw, brittle iron and transform it through heat, pressure, and relentless hammering into a blade that could cut through armor without breaking. You can take your fragile, anxiety-ridden, excuse-making mind and forge it into something that cannot be broken by failure, fear, or circumstance. Today, you'll discover exactly how. Before we begin, I ask one thing. Comment below, I will become steel. This declaration is your first act of commitment. It helps this message reach others who need to hear it. Now, let's begin the forging. Chapter 1. The SHITTR. And let me tell you about a man named Takeshi. Takeshi was 31 years old, a mid-level manager at a prestigious Tokyo trading company. On paper, everything looked perfect. University degree from Waseda, steady income, respected position. Takeshi had built his entire identity on one thing: performance without failure. For 8 years, he'd never missed a deadline, never made a significant mistake, never shown weakness. He was the reliable one, the one who absorbed pressure, the one who solved problems, till the day he couldn't. It started with a single mistake, a miscalculation in a quarterly report that cost his company 50 million yuan. Not catastrophic, but visible. Then came the second mistake. Then the third. His boss, who had always praised him, now watched him with suspicious eyes. Colleagues who once sought his advice now whispered when he walked past. And Takeshi, for the first time in his adult life, began to crack. The anxiety came first. A tightness in his chest that never fully released. Then the insomnia, 3 hours of sleep, became normal. Then the paralysis, sitting at his desk for hours, unable to make even simple decisions because his mind had simply stopped working. One night at 3 a.m., sitting on the floor of his apartment, Takeshi realized something terrifying. He had no idea who he was without success. His entire sense of self, his worth, his identity, his reason for existing was built on one foundation: being good at his job. And now, that foundation had cracks, and he was falling through them. That's when his uncle, a man named Masaru, former student of traditional Kinjutsu, who had spent 15 years training in a remote dojo in the mountains of Yamagata, noticed the collapse. Masaru said something Takeshi would never forget. "You don't have a work problem. You have a structural problem. You've built a house on sand. You're discovering that when the storm comes, there is no foundation beneath you." The warriors of old Japan faced this same problem, Masaru continued. They knew that external circumstances, victory, defeat, life, death, were ultimately beyond control. So they focused on the only thing that could be controlled: the forging of an unbreakable core. They called it fiducian, the immovable mind. And they had a specific system to create it, not through success, not through victory, but through something far more deliberate. Chapter 2. The Principle of the Fujimosaru. Took Takeshi to a dojo hidden in a quiet neighborhood of Kyoto. The master there was a 68-year-old man named Hayashi-sensei, whose family had practiced Bushido for 11 generations. The first thing Hayashi said wasn't about meditation or breathing techniques, it was about metallurgy. "Hayashi, do you understand how a katana is made?" He held an ancient blade, its surface rippling with the distinctive Heian pattern. Raw iron is worthless for a sword. It's filled with impurities, carbon deposits, air pockets, structural weaknesses. If you tried to make a blade from raw iron, it would shatter on first impact. But when you heat that iron to 1,400 degrees Celsius, fold it upon itself, hammer it 10,000 times, quench it in water, and repeat this process for weeks. You don't just strengthen the iron, you remove everything weak until only strength remains. What you have left is not iron anymore, it's steel. It's a completely different molecular structure. It can cut through bone and bamboo 1,000 times and never break. He looked directly at Takeshi. Your mind right now is raw iron, soft, full of impurities. The first real pressure exposed every weakness. Bushido is the process of removing those impurities, one by one, through heat, through pressure, through repetition. You cannot skip the fire. Takeshi had hoped for some kind of shortcut, a meditation technique, a mindset hack, something he could add to his routine and feel better within a week. Hayashi laughed and unkindly. You're still thinking about adding things. Bushido isn't about adding more practices to your life. It's about removing everything that makes you weak until only what is indestructible remains. Over the next 100 days, you will face 10 specific trials, not physical battles. Something harder. You will face yourself. Chapter 3. Trial 1. Confronting the Void Hayashi. What do you fear most? The question was simple. The answer was not. Takeshi started listing surface fears: losing his job, disappointing his parents, being seen as a failure. Hayashi shook his head slowly. No, those are symptoms. What is the root fear? Silence. Uncomfortable. Stretching Takeshi's throat tightened. And then finally, the truth broke through. I'm afraid of being nothing. Of being ordinary. Of living and dying and leaving no mark. Of being completely forgettable. Hayashi nodded. Now we have found the wound. Everything you've done, all the achievements, all the overwork, all the perfectionism, it was all to run away from this feeling. And what happened when the success disappeared? The fear came back, because you never faced it. You only covered it with achievements. The samurai had a practice for this. Long before the Stoics spoke of memento mori, we had simmin sound, shino meso, death meditation. Every warrior meditated daily on his own death, to face the ultimate fear directly. When you face annihilation every day, smaller fears lose their teeth. Lost your job? You're going to die anyway. Public humiliation? You're going to die anyway. Total failure? Going to die anyway. That way. When you accept death, you are finally free to live. Hayashi gave Takeshi his first practice every morning. For 20 minutes before doing anything else, visualize your own death in complete detail. Not morbidly, not depressingly, honestly. Imagine your body ceasing to function. Imagine the world continuing without you. Imagine that everything you built, every achievement, every possession, every identity, means nothing in the face of complete non-existence. Takeshi found this practice disturbing at first. His mind fought it with every excuse. This is unhealthy. You should be job hunting. You're wasting time. But he continued. And something extraordinary happened. By the second week, the fear began to lose its grip. Not because he was avoiding it, because he was staring directly at it. And when you stare at any monster long enough, it stops being a monster. It becomes just another part of reality. The anxiety about work was still there. But now, it seemed proportional, manageable, because compared to death-complete erasure from existence, losing a job was survivable. The samurai understood something profound. You cannot control whether you feel fear, but you can control whether fear controls you. Chapter 4, Trial 2, The Death of Reputation. The second trial was worse. Hayashi, you faced existential annihilation, now face social annihilation. He explained the principle of Meiho wo Sutero, banding honor the false kind. A warrior who needs approval is a controllable warrior. And a controllable warrior is a weak warrior. Your sense of self is still tied to what others think of you. This makes you a puppet. Every opinion is a string. We will cut those strings. The practice seemed absurd. Every week, do something publicly embarrassing. Deliberately invite judgment. Week 1, we're intentionally mismatched. Ridiculous clothing in public. Week 2, sing loudly in a crowded train station. Week 3, practice kata martial arts forms in a busy park where everyone can watch. Week 4, approach 10 strangers and ask for advice on an embarrassing personal problem. Takeshi resisted. How does humiliating myself help? Hayashi was direct. You think your problem is your job? It's not. Your problem is that you cannot exist without approval. You need people to think you're competent, intelligent, successful. That need is a chain around your neck. When approval disappears, and it always does, eventually you collapse. A true warrior can lose everything: reputation, status, respect, and remain whole. Because he doesn't derive his identity from anything external. He is the steel, not the sword. not the armor, not the victory, the steel. The first exercise was psychological torture. Tokushi wore a neon yellow shirt with purple checkered pants and a ridiculous festival headband. Every step through Shibuya felt like walking through fire. Every glance from a stranger felt like a physical blow. His mind screamed, "Everyone is judging you. You look insane. Stop this." But he kept walking. And after 30 minutes, nothing happened. No one attacked him. No one insulted him. Most people didn't even notice. And the ones who did, their opinions changed nothing about his actual life. The second week, singing in the train station was even more intense. But he noticed something. The discomfort was entirely internal. Most people smiled. Some recorded him. Few even clapped. The third week, performing kata in the park, he felt something shift. Not comfort. It's not relief. Freedom. Freedom to exist exactly as he was, imperfect, flawed, human, without needing anyone's permission. Freedom to be judged and remain intact. The samurai called this Mugano self. Not the absence of self, but the absence of the false self built on others' opinions. What remains is real. What is real cannot be shattered by judgment. Chapter 5. Trial 3. Righteous action. The third trial, cut deeper than the others. Hayashi, do you know the difference between iron and steel? He lifted the katana again. Iron bends under pressure. It takes the shape of whatever force pushes against it. Steel holds its form, no matter the pressure. An iron spirit does what's right when it's convenient. A steel spirit does what's right, especially when it costs everything. He looked at Takeshi with uncomfortable directness. There's a decision you've been avoiding. Tell me what it is. Takeshi's stomach dropped because Hayashi was right. There was something he'd been avoiding for months. His younger brother had borrowed 2 million yuan from him 2 years ago to start a business. The business failed. Brother never repaid the money and never even acknowledged the debt. Every family gathering became tense. Every conversation felt like walking on glass. Takeshi had avoided confronting him because, well, he was family. How do you demand money from your own brother? Wouldn't that destroy the relationship? Hayashi was blunt. You're prioritizing comfort over righteousness. It's iron. Iron bends to avoid pressure. You're sacrificing your own integrity to avoid a difficult conversation. And every day you don't address this, you lose respect for yourself. That self-betrayal is worse than any external betrayal. The samurai had a principle, GI righteousness. Duty above comfort. It doesn't mean being cruel. It means when you know what the right action is, you do it, heaven, if it's painful. A samurai who saw his lord acting unjustly had a duty to speak truth, heaven, knowing it might cost him his life. Not because it was easy, because it was right. Steel doesn't negotiate with pressure. Steel maintains its shape. Takeshi spent 5 days wrestling with the decision. Every time he picked up his phone to message his brother, his mind created 1,000 excuses. Maybe he'll pay it back eventually. Maybe I'm being petty. Maybe family is more important than money. But on the 6th day, he remembered. Steel doesn't bend. Set up the meeting. The conversation was one of the hardest things Takeshi had ever done. His brother reacted defensively. There was anger, denial, accusations of betrayal. The relationship didn't survive the conversation. Takeshi left that cafe feeling destroyed. But when he returned to the dojo that evening, Hayashi simply looked at him and nodded. Do you feel pain? Yes. Good. That means you still have a heart. But you did what needed to be done anyway. That means you have the beginning of a steel spirit. Iron avoids pain. Steel accepts pain as the cost of integrity. You were forged today, and now you know. You can do impossible things. Chapter 6. Trial 4. The way of form. But Hayashi knew that heroic moments do unbuild lasting strength. Daily discipline does. The 4th trial was the longest. 100 days of unbroken form. Hayashi, samurai didn't rely on motivation. They relied on kata form. Do you know why ceremonies exist? Tea is prepared in a specific sequence. Why kata is practiced identically each time? Because form creates substance. When you repeat correct form daily, Regardless of how you feel, you eventually become the form. Discipline cannot depend on emotion. Emotion is weather. Changes. Form is structure. It doesn't change. He created a specific morning sequence for Takeshi, the Katetsu sequence. 4:30 a.m. Wake. No negotiation. No snooze. Death meditation, 15 minutes visualizing mortality, 100 Subri wooden sword cuts. Perfect form, each time cold water purification. 3 minutes under cold shower, mindful breakfast prepared. And eaten with full attention, begin day's work. You will do this for 100 days. No exceptions. Sick, do it. Tired, do it. Traveling, do it. Don't feel like it. Especially do it. Because the point isn't the meditation or the cold shower. The point is becoming someone who doesn't negotiate with himself, which Keshi started to argue about balance and flexibility. Hayashi cut him off. Do you want steel or iron? Iron is flexible. It bends, it deforms, it breaks. Steel is rigid. It holds its shape under any pressure. You've spent 31 years being flexible. How's that working? Now we forge steel. The first week was psychological warfare. Every morning at 4:30, the alarm shattered his sleep, and his mind immediately began negotiating. You only slept 5 hours. One day off won't matter. You're being extreme. But Takeshi remembered. Steel doesn't negotiate. Feet on floor. Move. The cold shower was agony at first. 3 minutes felt like 30, but he understood something. The cold water was uncomfortable for exactly 3 minutes. But if he skipped it, the discomfort of breaking his word to himself would last all day. By day 7, something small but critical happened. He woke up 2 minutes before the alarm. By day 14, the sword cuts flowed naturally. Muscle memory had encoded them. By day 21, he stopped mentally negotiating each morning, simply did it. The practice was becoming automatic. A neuroscientist at Kyoto University has studied this phenomenon for decades. When you remove decision-making through automation, you free enormous mental energy for other areas. The samurai understood this centuries before science proved it. Chapter 7, Trial 5, The Collapse Test, Day 34. Takeshi woke up with a fever of 39 degrees Celsius. His body ached. For the first time since beginning the practice, he physically couldn't stand without dizziness. His mind immediately offered relief. Finally, a legitimate excuse. No one would expect you to practice today. Rest. You've earned it. But then he remembered Hayashi's words. The real test of steel doesn't come when everything is perfect. It comes when the system collapses. Anyone can be disciplined when it's easy. Steel is disciplined when it's impossible. Takeshi didn't do 100 sword cuts. Physically impossible. But he did 10 cuts while sitting on his bed. He didn't take a 3-minute cold shower. But he did splash cold water on his face for 30 seconds. He didn't meditate for 15 minutes. But he did 3 minutes. The form was adapted, but not abandoned. And that made all the difference. Because the danger isn't having to adapt. Once you create a gap in your practice, your brain learns that gaps are allowed. Gaps become the new normal. The samurai had a simple rule. Practice never stops. It can be modified, but never eliminated. Because the moment you allow a complete exception, you're no longer practicing discipline. You're practicing convenience. Let me explain this principle more clearly because understanding it can transform your entire approach to life. There are people who live in an all-or-nothing mentality. People who would rather do nothing than do something imperfectly. But perfection doesn't exist. While you wait for the perfect moment, someone else, perhaps less talented, is out there executing, imperfectly but consistently. So write this principle down and apply it to your life. 1 will always be greater than 0. On the day you can't study for 2 hours, study for 1 hour but never 0. On the day you can't train for 1 hour, train for 30 minutes but never 0. The day you can't do 100 sword cuts, do 10 but never 0. This applies to everything in life. On day 50, a different test arrived. Takeshi received a job offer, a good one, better salary than before, respected company. Things were looking up. And immediately his mind whispered, you don't need this extreme routine anymore. You've proven your point. You can relax now. Hayashi called this shunidu shori no daku, the poison of victory. More dangerous than failure, he explained, because it's more seductive. Failure is obvious. You know you must change. But success. Success tricks you into thinking you can return to old habits, that you've earned comfort. Samurai understood that victory is when you're most vulnerable, because that's when you stop sharpening the blade. And a blade that isn't sharpened becomes dull, and a dull blade breaks. Takeshi almost fell for it. For 3 days, he considered sleeping until 6. Skipping the cold shower, taking weekends off, but he caught himself. The practice wasn't about saving his career. The practice was about forging a spirit that wouldn't break regardless of external circumstances. Getting the job was irrelevant to the practice. The practice existed independently of results. Katetsu no Seishin. Will of Steel doesn't depend on winning or losing. It exists as an unchanging constant. Chapter 8. Trial 6. The Fire of Loss. Day 68. At 11 p.m. Takeshi received the call every son fears. His father had suffered a severe stroke. He was in intensive care in Osaka 4 hours away. Takeshi needed to leave immediately. No structure, no dojo, no controlled environment, complete chaos. His mind offered the obvious escape. This is a real emergency. Family comes first. Obviously, you can't maintain the practice right now. You'll restart when things settle. But something had changed in Takeshi. He was no longer negotiating. On the bullet train to Osaka, he performed invisible sword cuts with his hands, memorizing each movement. In the hospital bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face for 3 minutes, while other visitors gave him strange looks. In the ICU waiting room at 4:30 a.m., while his mother slept in a chair beside him, he closed his eyes and performed his death meditation. It wasn't perfect, but it was continuous. And for the first time, Takeshi fully understood what Hayashi had been teaching. Practice doesn't serve circumstances. Circumstances serve practice. A samurai doesn't train for the day of battle. He trains because he is a samurai. The battle is irrelevant. Identity is permanent. His father survived. The recovery would be long. Takeshi would need to visit Osaka frequently. His life was now more complicated than before. But he was stable. Not happy. Not comfortable. Stable. Because the steel within him wasn't dependent on external conditions being perfect. Steel doesn't require perfect conditions. Steel maintains its integrity regardless of environment. When he returned to the dojo 2 weeks later, Hayashi simply nodded. You've learned the deepest lesson. The practice isn't something you do when life allows it. Practice is how you meet life, regardless of what life brings. You are no longer practicing Bushido. You are becoming it. Chapter 9. Trial 7. The Mirror, Day 75. Hayashi gave Takeshi a different kind of practice. Sit, he said, pointing to a cushion facing a large mirror. For the next hour, look at yourself. Just look. Don't meditate. Don't think. Don't analyze. Just see yourself. Completely. Takeshi thought this would be easy. It was the hardest practice yet. After 5 minutes, his mind was screaming to do something. Check his phone, adjust his posture, close his eyes. After 10 minutes, discomfort turned to agitation. After 15 minutes, something cracked. He saw himself for perhaps for the first time in his life. Not the image he projected, not the person he wished he was. The actual human being sitting there, flawed, aging, imperfect, fragile, and beneath all the layers of identity, achievement, and story. Someone very, very ordinary. And it was. Okay. Hayashi later explained the purpose. The ego survives by never looking directly at itself. It creates stories, identities, achievements, anything to avoid seeing what's actually there. But steel doesn't have an ego. Steel doesn't have a story about itself. Steel simply is. When you can look at yourself without flinching, without adding narrative or judgment, you found something unbreakable. Because you're no longer defending an image. You're simply existing. Existence doesn't need defense. Chapter 10. Trial 8. Deliberate Suffering, Day 82. Hayashi took Takeshi to the mountains outside Kyoto. Today's practice, Shuju Austere Training. You will hike to that shrine. He pointed to a structure barely visible at the top of a steep mountain. 6 hours up. You'll carry this. He handed Takeshi a backpack filled with stones. 15 kilograms. You will not stop except for water. You will not complain. You will not quit. Why? Because comfort is the enemy of steel. The more comfortable your life becomes, the more fragile your spirit becomes. The samurai deliberately chose difficulty: cold water, hard floors, simple food, intense training, not out of masochism, but out of understanding. A spirit that only knows comfort cannot handle hardship, and life will always eventually bring hardship, so we inoculate ourselves against it. The first hour was manageable. The second hour, Tokashi's shoulders began screaming. The third hour, every step was negotiation against quitting. The fourth hour, something broke through the pain: clarity. When the body suffers, the mind goes quiet. All the mental chatter, the worries, the planning, the identity maintenance, it all falls away. What remains is simple. One step, then another, then another. No story, no drama, just action. At the summit, 6 hours and 40 minutes later, Takeshi collapsed. Hayashi sat beside him, barely winded despite being twice his age. "Now you understand," Hayashi said. "Suffering is not something to avoid. Suffering is a tool. When you voluntarily choose suffering, you remove its power over you. You're no longer afraid of difficulty because you've already walked into difficulty by choice. This is freedom." Chapter 11, Trial 9, Teaching What You've Learned, Day 91. Hayashi surprised Takeshi with an unexpected instruction. "A new student begins tomorrow. You will teach him," Takeshi protested. "Not ready. I'm still learning. I don't know enough." "Hayashi, that's exactly why you must teach." The samurai understood. You don't truly know something until you can transmit it. Teaching forces you to organize what you've learned, to see your own gaps, to articulate what was previously only felt. And more importantly, he looked at Takeshi seriously. Teaching transforms learning from something you do into something you are. When you're responsible for another's development, you can no longer be casual about your own practice. You become what you teach. The new student was a 24-year-old named Kenji, anxious, scattered, desperate for quick results. Takeshi saw himself from 3 months ago. And in teaching Kenji the basics of the death meditation, the public embarrassment exercises, the daily form, Takeshi realized how much had actually changed. Concepts that had seemed impossible 90 days ago now felt fundamental. The cold showers that had been torture were now just morning. The 4:30 a.m. wake-up that had required heroic willpower was now automatic. He had become what he practiced. In teaching Kenji, Takeshi discovered the final piece. Strength isn't truly yours until you can give it away. Chapter 12, Trial 10, The Final Test, Day 100. There was no ceremony, no celebration. Takeshi simply woke at 4:30, performed his sequence, and prepared for the day. But Hayashi called him to the dojo that evening. "You have completed the first cycle. Tell me, what is Kitetsu no Seishin?" Takeshi thought carefully before answering. "It's not about not feeling pain or fear. It's about acting correctly regardless of what you feel." Hayashi nodded. "Partially, but there's something deeper." He lifted the ancient katana one final time. "Do you know how long it takes to forge a true katana?" The swordsmith heats the steel, hammers it, folds it hundreds of times. Because each cycle removes impurities. In the beginning, steel is full of weaknesses, carbon deposits, air pockets, structural flaws. But every heating and hammering removes more impurities, till finally, nothing weak remains, just pure steel. Unbreakable. He looked at Takeshi. "And these 100 days didn't make you strong. They removed what was weak. Your fear of death removed through daily confrontation, your need for approval removed through deliberate exposure, your dependence on comfort removed through chosen difficulty, your fragile ego removed through honest self-seeing. Have not built a new spirit. You have revealed the spirit that was always there beneath the weakness." Kitetsu no Seishin isn't about becoming something you're not. It's about removing everything that isn't you until only the essential remains, and the essential is indestructible. Epilogue. The aftermath: 6 months after completing the 100 days, Takeshi's external life looked similar. He was back at a company, not the same one he'd found a different position. Still faced pressure, deadlines, difficult people, but something fundamental had changed. When a project failed and his manager exploded in anger, Takeshi remained steady. When a colleague publicly blamed him for a team mistake, he felt the sting, but it didn't collapse him. When unexpected family expenses destroyed his savings, he adapted without panic. People around him began asking questions. How are you so calm? Don't you ever stress? How did you change? The answer was simple, but not easy. I was forged. Not overnight. Not through a single insight. It's not through motivation. It's through 100 days of systematically removing every weakness. It's through facing death until it lost its power. Through humiliation until approval became irrelevant. It's through cold water until comfort became optional. It's through difficulty until ease was no longer required for functioning. The practice continued, not because it would guarantee success, but because it was who he had become. Every morning, 4:30 a.m., death meditation, sword cuts, cold water, mindful breakfast, not as a means to an end, as an end itself. I guess Katetsu no Sishin, the spirit of steel, isn't a destination. It's a perpetual forging process. You never finish removing weaknesses. There are always deeper layers. But the difference is, now you know you can handle whatever comes. You've been through fire enough times to know fire can't destroy you. And that certainty changes everything about how you move through the world. People sense it, not as arrogance, as something deeper. The presence of someone who cannot be shaken, because you've already been broken 1,000 times in the process of becoming unbreakable. Closing. The question for you is simple. Do you want to be forged? Not motivated. Not inspired? Forged. Because this isn't about a 5-minute technique. No, it's not about feeling better by next week. It's about 100 days of systematic destruction of everything weak within you. Destruction of comfortable excuses. Destruction of fragile ego. Destruction of dependence on external circumstances. The process is brutal. It will require waking up when every cell wants sleep. It will require facing what you've spent years avoiding. It will require doing what's right when it's agonizing. But in the end, you won't be the same person. You'll be steel. And steel doesn't break. The samurai spent centuries perfecting this because they understood, in a world of chaos and inevitable suffering, the only thing you truly control is the strength of your own spirit. You can't control whether you'll fail, but you can control whether you'll stay down. This is Bushido. This is Katetsu no Sishin. This is what it means to have an unbreakable spirit. If this video resonated with you, subscribe and comment. I will become steel below. Not for motivation. It's a declaration. Thank you for walking this path with me. I'll go begin your forging.